handful of practices. What's he looked like out there to you, and what's the toughest challenge trying to implement players like him and Gordon back into the offense this late in the season?
Well, first, Corbin, he looks terrific. He's looking fast. He's looking explosive, moving really well, running routes really well. I think he looks as good as you could expect him to see. Like, I hadn't seen him for a while. He's been working when he came out, started last week, right, doing different things. This week, I think he's getting close to being ready to go. In terms of getting those guys involved or getting them ready to play, in this game, they're always preparing themselves mentally. I think that's where Rashad's really grown. You ask him anything systematically that we're doing, ask him anything that the Redskins present problems and all those things, he's on it. I mean, he's really studied and prepared himself for that. And it's just getting him out there feeling comfortable moving around physically, which we're checking those off the box as we go. But he's been in all the meetings, different than Josh. Josh will be a little bit different, but Rashad looks like he's really, really close.
Brady.
Hi, Brian. What's the let me rephrase that. What kind of a mentality or an approach does a receiver like DK have to have when he knows he's going to spend, he knows, in the next game he plays, he's going to get a lot of attention from a number one cornerback?
It sounds boring, Brady, but he's just used to it. There's nothing that he can do differently. If teams want to match him with somebody, they do. DK, and we believe this offensively, the defense is out there to try to slow us down and to present problems for us, but we don't ever give them too much credit. We don't ever say, okay, well, if this guy matches you, boy, we can't throw you the ball. DK's too good of a player to have that happen. I think it's a challenge. I think it motivates him. He's a guy that's always responded, whether it's a guy matching him or people challenging him saying you can't do this or you can't do that, or hey, his draft status a couple years back, it motivates him. So the cool thing about DK is, I think whether he's learned this from Russ, is each week he's dialed in and it's like, okay, the last game's over, let me get ready for the next opponent, and I'm going to go tackle that game and that matchup and those coverages that I might face.
When did you start to realize that he would be up for those kinds of challenges? If I remember correctly, but tell me if I'm wrong, you said it was last year in the first Rams game that's when you started to realize that?
That's exactly what it was. It's the first time that we had gone against the Rams with Jalen. Jalen matched him early. We didn't try him a whole lot. As the game went, Russ found him on a big scramble play. There were some other plays that we got to him. So it was at that moment you're like, okay, this guy wants the ball in those situations. He wants to be great. And that continued to grow into the playoffs. I mean, you watch him in Philadelphia, right, what he was able to do in that situation. So you knew pretty quick that was a guy that, hey, I want the spotlight, I want the ball. Give me an opportunity to make those plays no matter who I'm up against.
Joe Fan.
Hey, Brian, Adam Schefter reported over the weekend that your name was being floated for the Houston job. I know you're focused on this season, but is the end goal for you? Would you like to be a head coach in this league?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to be a head coach. But those things are flattering, but they don't help you beat a really good Washington Redskins team. So honored to be in that consideration, but I'm really focused on doing what I can to play well against a really, really one of the best defenses we've played this year.
Have you had an interview before?
I've had 5 throughout the year, throughout my career.
Can you share just a couple of them, or I could probably Google it? But
yeah, I mean, you can look them up. I mean, it was a bunch when I was with the Jets, but again, to be mentioned in that is great. But really, what's it about? It's about how well we're doing offensively. This is not about me. It's about the Seattle Seahawks. It's about Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett. Let's talk about those guys. What a great job those guys are doing. Chris Carson being back, the offensive line. So again, I'm honored and flattered, but I'm just proud of this group and how well we've done. But we got a lot of work left to do.
John Boyle.
Yeah, Brian, just curious your thoughts on what Duane Brown is doing this year. I know he can't practice fully every week because you're kind of managing him, but how well he's playing at 35 years old and just all things he's doing.
It's amazing. I would say he's the heartbeat of the offensive line. He's one of the leaders. For a guy to miss as much practice time as he does, it's amazing that you play at that level, because what happens as the season goes, people lose their ability to, not schematically, but fundamentally, you see players start to lessen and their pass protection gets off, or a quarterback's footwork might get off. This guy hasn't lost that. And I think that comes from just his professionalism, but the way he works. He tries to take every rep that he can of walkthrough. But it's a testament to him, and just he's having a terrific season.
Tim?
Brian, you already have two pretty good running backs, and trying to get them carries can sometimes be a challenge. What happens when you add a third whenever Rashad comes back, especially to a position that's so – those guys like to get in rhythm. They like to get multiple carries at a time to get going.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have, Tim. That problem falls really during the course of the week. We normally kind of work through that. Then we have a plan going into the game to try to get all those guys involved. And, depending on how the game's going, that certainly helps. If you're having success and you're doing what we did last week, winning the time of possession, you're staying on the field, it's easier to get all those guys involved. But it's a good problem to have. You need backs. A couple weeks ago, it seems like we weren't sure who was going to play. I don't remember what that game was. I think I blocked it out of my mind, but there was one game we weren't sure, and we were trying guys out and seeing, okay, hey, can you run the ball? Can you do this? Can you do that? So it's a good situation to have. And what I've noticed is these guys all cheer for each other. They're competing. They want to be great, but if Chris scores, Carlos is excited. If Rashad would rip off a big run last year, Chris would be excited. So they cheer for each other, and that friendly competition is cool to see.
Matt Calkins.
Brian, going back to DK, you have a player as dynamic as him. How much of play calling is, all right, let's see what the defense gives us? How much is it, all right, we got to figure out a way to get this guy the ball somehow?
Yeah, there's certain players, Tyler, DK, Matt, that when you put your game plan together, there's actually sections on your call sheet that say, okay, hey, how do I get the ball to this guy? Because as the flow of the game starts, right, you've got a plan going in. A lot of times there's things you're like, okay, didn't expect that, so we got to adjust to do that. So guys like that, those special type players, there's literally spots on your call sheet where you've kind of labeled, okay, here's where he's the first progression. Here's where I can get the ball in his hand. And so as the game goes, every other series, you're constantly looking and saying, okay, hey, look here. Oh, hey, I haven't used this one yet. Because when you're looking at the card and there's all those different plays on there, things get lost. So it's always nice to have a reference point for those two guys. And each week it's different. Sometimes there's matchups that we really like. Maybe it's, hey, this week we really love the matchup with the tight ends on the safeties. Then they'll have their section. But terrific player. And at times, to be honest, you don't have to try to get him the ball. It's just the way the game goes. And they isolate him, or there's a matchup that Russ sees, and he's so talented that the ball goes there. And you're like, boy, wasn't expecting it to go there, and it does.
Art?
Ryan, a year ago, the emergency klaxons were going off around the running back position, and you were introducing Marshawn Lynch and Robert Turbin to the playbook. I'm just wondering if you recall any anecdotes or episodes, sad or funny, from those desperate hours.
It was one of the more, I would say, not desperate, I would say maybe stressful situation. I remember I've shared the story before, but meeting Marshawn for the first time up in Chad Morton's office, and then walking downstairs into the team meeting room, and this is when we could actually sit close together, and Marshawn was in my seat, and I was at a little bit of an impasse because I didn't know whether I should ask him to move or not. I mean, a little bit of Seahawks royalty there. But I found the courage to ask him to move, and he obliged. The problem would have been, Art, if he said, I'm not moving, dog. I'm not moving, dog. Then I don't know. I probably would have found a seat someplace else. But I think it's, again, amazing what we were able to do in those playoff stretch there with those guys, both with that they were able to do and how we kind of adjusted offensively, schematically, the coaching staff. That was cool to see a very stressful moment, for the most part, become very positive.
Michael Sean?
Hey, Shotty, Tyler's production has taken a dip since that big Arizona game out there on the road. What do you attribute that to?
Well, first, I think it's hard to have 15 for 200. I think it's just the way the ball goes, Michael. He's not doing anything different. We're not game planning any different. The season goes in ebbs and flows for everybody, whether it's the quarterback, the running backs, the offensive linemen, the tight ends. So I really don't think that there's anything I point to that says, oh, boy, he's not getting the ball because of this. He's still making some big-time plays for us. And I think it's because we've got so much talent. You've got guys like David Moore that stepped up and made unbelievable plays. Let's talk about Demo for a second and what he's done. You've got DK, you've got Chris, you've got Carlos. I was fired up that Jake Hollister continues to do what he does. Will Dissly getting the touchdown. So there's really nothing that Tyler's done. Would not surprise me this week if Tyler has a huge game. If it's not this week, it very easily could be the next game. You've not seen the last of Tyler. He's not disappointed. He's doing everything right. So I think we're awfully blessed to have those type of players.
Since he's been here, he's been about as sure-handed as any receiver in the league, but he's put it on the ground a lot this year. Is that something you guys have talked about this season?
We coach everybody the same when it comes to that. If there's one thing that came out of the game last week, was we were all a little bit loose with the ball carriage. We call it flying elbow. The elbow is getting away from their body. We've coached that up this week. Guys are on it. These guys really take to what we emphasize. And we know where we want to go. We got to be great at taking care of the football, whether it's catching it, securing it, even the quarterback center exchange stuff. We got to be great with that. So that's always an emphasis. And anything we emphasize, these guys they're dialed in and they do a great job of really buying into what we're telling them.
Jackie?
At 35 years old, were you surprised to see Greg Olsen return from his injury as quickly as he did? And secondly, how valuable is he in that tight end room considering how young that group is?
Yeah, the answer to the first question is absolutely. Just because I know that, that's an injury that can take a little bit of time. So it's amazing that he's worked his way back. He's looking good. We'll see where that goes. And in terms of the importance of him in the room, he's just seen so much football. It's truly like having another coach in the room because he's seen so much football. Run game, pass protection, pass concepts, coverages. And so there's unbelievable value in the expertise that he has of playing that position. And he's obviously a great communicator, as we have all seen. So it's huge for us. I know Pat McPherson, myself, Dave Canales, guys that are in that room, we're blown away by the insight that he gives those young players.
Bob?
Brian, obviously their defensive ends are really good. Do they do anything in particular to free those guys up, or do those guys just win a lot of one-on-one battle kind of things, or?
Yeah, but Bob, it's not just their defensive ends. Allen's one of the best interior defensive linemen. They're really deep in their attack inside. They're just great athletes. They're great players. They're a penetrating front. Anybody that's played a Jack Del Rio or a Ron Rivera defense, you're going to see their whole objective is to knock people back and to create problems inside. So the ends are really, really good, but the interior guys are just as dangerous. They do a really nice job of moving the pocket. You try to look at them and you say, okay, this week, hey, compare these guys to other people you played. They're very different. The ends are two young, athletic, great change of direction guys. The interior guys are powerful, disruptive. That's why I said earlier, I think this is one of the best defenses that we've played this season, and they do create a lot of problems for any opposing offense.
Greg?
Hi, Brian. How has Will Dissly developed as a pass blocker in your time with him?
I think it's something he wasn't asked to do a whole lot of. Greg coming in here, obviously defensive end, tight end / fullback, H-back. He works at it all the time. He's gotten so much better at hand usage. So much of pass protection is your ability to refit your hands. Because when you go to block somebody, right, I go to block you, okay, which I'd probably be able to do. But if I go to block you, right, and you knock my hand off, right, they're taught to try to knock your hands off. It's all about replacing that hand that gets knocked off. And so he's really just worked. I mean, you guys will see him pre-practice. He's over there doing different drills to work on his hand placement and his replacement of hands. And then he's just extremely powerful through his lower body. So he has gotten a lot better, but it's still an extremely difficult job that not many tight ends in the NFL can do. So it comes from his strength, his ability to use his hands, but also a lot of it just comes down to flat-out work ethic and training and working those fundamentals that we talked about that, again, I'm going to go back and brag on Will. You know, it's easy to do it in week 1, week 3, week 4. But now you get into the latter part of the season, guys are tired, right? Maybe I'll go home a little earlier today. Maybe I won't go out quite as early for the start of practice. Not this guy. This guy's out here early. He's out here working. He doesn't ask for a minute off, which is cool.
Thank you. I think I blocked you if I needed to, though.
Maybe after the season. After the season, we'll have a little one-on-one matchup.
Yes, sir.
And last one for Coach Curtis.
Yeah, Brian, you kind of mentioned it there, but given the kind of pickle you were in at running back last year, to have Rashad coming back, to have Chris and Carlos ready to go, how much lower blood pressure does that make you have at this stage, given where you're at in the season and everything?
We're excited because Chris, you're seeing Chris, right? I mean, for a while there, you didn't really probably see Chris and how talented that he is. You see him, you see what Carlos can produce. We all know Rashad. The question was Rashad coming back from the injury. What I've seen is he looks amazing. Midpoint of the season, whatever game that was, when we were going out, honestly, to pregame warm-ups and we weren't quite sure, maybe San Francisco, I think it was San Francisco, and we weren't quite sure what our running back situation would look like. We're in a much different spot. And for me, as the guy that's got to call the plays, it makes it a little bit easier knowing that you're pretty deep there, you're pretty deep at the tight end room, and then, of course, you've got the receiver situation, which is nice to have.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.